Welcome to the 8th episode of the Hindsight and Hot Takes podcast. I'm your host, Connor Justclair. I'm joined once again by Taylor Plaisance. Taylor has been an avid follower of all things football for over 17 years. Today, LSU held their annual Spring Football Scrimmage and open practice in Tiger Stadium. We were in attendance. Before we give you our thoughts, it's time for 2020 Vision. One of the things that we both noticed was that the format of the entire scrimmage was a little different than your normal spring game. Here's what Brian Kelly had to say about that.
Matt was what we put together instead of a spring game, and from my perspective, it allowed us to cover virtually every situation in a game, including some live special teams that, in my time as a head coach, we sometimes don't get. Everybody gets work. It gives us the opportunity to not worry about the depth and who to protect. Everybody gets a chance to get out there and compete. And, I can craft the situations within the game that allows us to get the appropriate work necessary and still, have a pregame timeline and still get them in the game day locker room and still get a routine that mimics in some fashion what it's like to prepare for a game situation. So from that perspective, we've got great film to watch and to evaluate and to continue to work on our players, technical and tactical development. This wasn't a practice for us to go, okay, this is the starting left guard or this is the starting, safety. This was about another step towards, developing our football team and getting us closer to the preparation necessary for when we go into camp, getting us ready for our first game.
Right, Taylor, now that we heard from Brian Kelly, what was your take on the new layout?
It was a little confusing because I'm pretty sure they changed it to limit injuries, but as we saw today, a good few people were limping off the field, so
Yep.
I don't know what was supposed to be happening, but I kind of prefer the other format.
I think, as Brian Kelly said, it gave players a chance to see all kind of what you would expect in a game. It really wasn't just your average 4 downs. It was a lot of, you really get to nitpick each individual group. So I guess for development reasons, I think it'll help the team. It was a little unorthodox.
Yeah, I noticed that, for example, there was, second down and they went for a field goal. They're just really trying to nitpick those individual groups, not trying to do a whole 4-quarter scrimmage like they usually do.
Agreed, and I guess we'll see what happens with that in the future, but it was an interesting layout. We'll see if, for the next coming years of spring practices, if they go back to the old way or they keep the new format. So, Taylor, what was your first takeaway from today's scrimmage?
One big thing for me that I noticed was how dominant our defense looked as a whole, especially our D-line, which it's kind of scary because it might be that our offensive line isn't looking too hot, but there's going to be some growing pains losing your 2 tackles. That's been there for a good few years, but our D-line looked great. I'm sure our O-line will figure it out. Our secondary looked great also. Saw a few interceptions today as well.
Yeah, one by P.J. Woodland. My biggest takeaway from the defense was the D-line. I mean, you went and spend money in the transfer portal. Pyburn, Patrick Payton, and those were the 2 guys that, to me, from the defensive line, that stood out the most. I mean, Pyburn looked like a next level. He looked next level. I mean, he recorded multiple sacks, pass breakups. I mean, the dude was just unguardable. A lot of QB hurries. I mean, he was kind of each down, he was always on Nussmeier.
Yeah, it kind of gave me flashbacks to the Florida game this past year because that's exactly what he was doing to us then.
So, you see the growth. You see he's continuing to do that even though he's with a different team. Patrick Payton, too, from Florida State. One of the highest transfers in the whole portal. He looked good. What were some of your takeaways on him?
Patrick Payton, I wasn't expecting a lot. I was really just focused on Jack Pyburn, but he surprised me. It was just a tale of two sides. You could either put a double team on Jack Pyburn, and then the other side was completely open for Patrick. It was just unguardable for either of them.
I think both of them are. You're gonna after today's practice, you expect a very big season out of your D line, and I think you're gonna see a lot of improvement moving forward. So next, we'll talk about some of the players that weren't on the field today. First off, Caden Durham, again last year freshman phenom for the Tigers. Brian Kelly said Durham had an ankle sprain in a practice earlier this week, so he was in a walking boot and will likely be back next Thursday. Another impact player on offense that was out today was Florida State transfer and former Edna Carr star Destin Hill. He also he was dealing with a high ankle sprain.
Unfortunately, another star was Trey'Dez Green. During practice, he got rolled up on. Did not look too comfortable after that. Kelly said he didn't want to leave the field, but it looked like he wanted to stay. But new rule that if a player goes down after the ball is put in play, you have to be charged a timeout. So they wanted to keep immersed in the game for that.
And I think, as Brian Kelly also said in the press conference, he's used the that moment as a teaching moment to players, like especially for the next season. If a player goes down and the ball's set, if a player goes down, you're gonna have to use a timeout. So that's a new rule that was introduced in college football.
Yeah, no more Ole Miss timing.
No more Lane Kiffin timing,
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's gonna have a big effect on the game. I'm glad that was covered. Not again, I didn't want Trey'Dez Green to get hurt, but I'm glad it was shown to players that this is how the new rule is. So they're gonna be expecting it for the future. All right, the next position that I really wanted to talk about was the quarterbacks. First off, Garrett Nussmeier. Taylor, what did you see about him?
Nussmeier always looks good in my opinion, but I feel like today was some very good practice for where we're going to be going against an SEC play this year. Like, he had maybe 2 seconds each time he snapped the ball before he was getting pressured by Pyburn, for example. But even with those, he was still hitting a good few of his throws, which he can always get better, and I see that he's going to improve before the season starts.
One major target that he looked like he was turning to a lot today was transfer receiver Barian Brown from Kentucky, speedster. How did Barian Brown stand out to you today?
Barian Brown, I think he's going to be wide receiver 1. Looking at it, he was just always getting open. On a day that a lot of people were getting clamped up by our really good D.
Really good D. Another receiver that stood out to me was Xavion Thomas. They used him in a lot of option/end-around plays. A lot near the goal line, specifically. I mean, the dude was just making guys miss throughout the whole practice.
Yeah, we saw that a lot last year, where he wasn't used as much as a pass threat, but a lot of jet sweep actions, little options that they just handed him the ball because he will make the first guy miss.
And I will say, one good thing about the tackles, it looked like towards the outsides, they were blocking better than just straight up the middle and pass blocking, which is different than last year, where last year you had no run blocking, it was all pass blocking.
Yeah.
So, this could be a new scheme that LSU has to play into. Again, they still have a lot of practice left. It was just one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, hopefully it'll just open up our game to being more than just a big passing team, because we need versatility to get it done on the next level.
And then I guess my final thing was Nick Anderson, Oklahoma transfer receiver, that big body receiver that we were looking for last year. How did he stand out to you?
I didn't see too many plays with him, which he was with the second stringers with Van Buren, not Nussmeier's team, but he looked like he was getting open a good few times, just wasn't being seen. I think he'll grow into the team. A big body guy, obviously he's going to do good.
All right, the next group we'll go into is the running backs. First off, Harlem Berry. You got to see the 5-star guy in action. What were your thoughts on him?
honestly, I've never seen something like that in person. He had a really good vision. He was making a lot of people miss. There was one play, he just took it up the middle for like 40 yards, and he was just outrunning everyone.
As you heard Brian Kelly say earlier in the spring, the dude's vision is amazing, is elite. Obviously, he hasn't learned the blocking yet, the blocking schemes, but I think, again, he didn't have to do that in high school, and the dude's a freshman. But, I mean, what I've heard from Brian Kelly, they're going to use him in this offense. He's probably going to be running back 2 for this team.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he was not running back 1 or 2 this coming year. And we didn't bring him in for a blocker. If he's in, he's probably going to touch the ball from how good he is.
I agree. The next thing that stood out to me was the amount of... Sometimes we were running like 3 tight end sets today with Bauer Sharp and Texas A&M tight end Donovan Green. Also, they were substituting another blocker. They had Bo Bordelon there. I think that really shows that this team's gonna use running as a form of offense in just another way.
Which is very unlike last year, which it was past 95% of the time. Because the blocking last year just wasn't very good, and I'm glad they're making a change to that, especially with the diverse runners we have now, like Harlan Berry, Caden Durham, and now, as you've seen, Jujuan Johnson at quarterback.
And going to Jujuan Johnson, I mean, the dude was all over the field today. He really, again, he was going against 13 guys, but he showed out. He was athletic, making athletic plays, making all the throws. I think he's going to be a very dangerous weapon for this LSU offense.
100%.
Right, Taylor, if you had to pick a best play of the day, what would it be?
In my opinion, the best play of the day was the touchdown by redshirt sophomore Kylan Billiot. Towards the end, that was a monster catch, in my opinion.
Really went up there. Kylan Billiot from Thibodeau, a Thibodeau Tiger, following in the footsteps of Kyron Lacey. I mean, after catching that pass from Nussmeier, made a great play on the ball. I expect big things from him this upcoming season.
100%.
And then I guess, Taylor, my final question is, after today's scrimmage, are you more excited or less excited about hopefully another great season from the Tigers?
Oh, I am being more excited is an understatement for me personally. Just seeing that little bit of football, I'm ready to have the full experience, and I know we're going to do great things this year.
Again, the sun's shining. It was a beautiful day in Tiger Stadium. I'm excited for this season coming up. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a like and comment your thoughts.
Hindsight's got the view, hot takes cutting through. Join us next time, my friend, where the shouting never ends.